Welcome to Scramble Game Show. Today we don't have games, but we have a guest. And as you probably know, not too many days left for our election. And so we have a candidate who's running for assembly. And let's welcome Ms. Kim Izzarelli.
Hi, Dr. Chang.
Hey, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We take this sort of forum, sometimes inviting candidates just to let our audience, principally families, kids, and so on, to know about our sort of political process, why people are running for public office, and what do they hope to accomplish. I think this kind of dialogue helps a lot, not only for
Absolutely.
the candidates, and also for the audience. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy that you could make it today.
Well, I'm pleased to be here. I'm running for the 95th Assembly,
Yes.
the Assembly person from 95th. Mm-hmm. And as you may know, that includes Briarcliff and Ossining, and the town of Cortland, Peekskill, and Phillipstown.
And this is this is the newly redistricted area.
That's
now,
right.
Right. So what's added into this?
Actually, it was what was removed, Putnam Valley.
Removed Putnam Valley.
That's right, Putnam Valley.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's before we get into the meat of it, let's get some of your background. Okay. I always like to have people to understand, why people sort of get into this interest. And by profession, you are a
pension and retirement plan consultant.
Consultant, yes.
I have a pretty strong background in retirement plans and auditing, internal auditor to retirement plans. I started out in accounting, graduated with a degree in accounting from American International College, and
I see.
Went on to University of Hartford, where I earned a master's degree in organizational behavior, and now I'm earning my second master's degree in educational leadership.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. I see. So you're also very interested in education, and you served as a school PTA before, right?
As a treasurer, and did a number of the civic loop, and still continue to serve on boards in my community as a civic leader and organizer. But yes, I did serve on the audit committee of my school and some other committees there as well. But I believe that education is our future, and in New York we have the best and the brightest, and we have terrific schools. We also have very high taxes.
Right. But we have a fundamental question everybody always asks. New York State spent the most money in education, but we don't rank on very high on the
we need to figure out how to fix that, and there's a lot of things in place, as you know, this year, and to that end, to try to raise the bar and get more performance or higher level of performance from our teaching staff and schools. But it's really a very serious problem. Most of the revenue in New York State goes to one of two places, aid to schools or Medicaid.
Right.
And so it's a big number. It needs to be better understood. It needs to be more efficiently applied or utilized, and we have to have some method to measure results that's meaningful, and that's a lot of what's going on this year.
Right. And you have children?
I do. I have, they happen to be here today in the control room, a 7th grader daughter and a 9th grader, first-year high school son.
They're both in public school?
They're both in Briarcliff Public Schools, yes.
So you understand pretty much the public schools sort of problems now we face, right?
Yeah, well, my school district is a terrific school district. I wish that every child in New York State could have a school as high performing as my school district. I don't understand, for the amount of money that we pay, why we don't have a Briarcliff school district in every school district in New York State. We maybe should set our bar a little higher and expect a little more.
This probably will gradually lead into this assembly, sort of a assemblyman's job, responsibility, part of them. I think the school in New York State has been sort of divided into two camps. One of the camp is, they always say, city, downstate as one camp. Upstate is another camp. As far as money goes, and certain, big portion of money goes to, the down county camp, and certain is, this money divided in such a way, but not, as you probably know, that delivering the same results. And I think our legislators, or whether it's assembly or senate, bears the responsibility. For 20, 30 years, how come we cannot fix that problem? We do spend a lot of money, as you say. We sort of throw money at into schools, but we still have that serious problem. So if you get elected as assemblyman, so what do you think you can do?
Well, you use the word camp, which sounds as if people are divided or entrenched or taking positions, and I like to think of it as that people in New York are capable of coming together and resolving problems and doing extraordinary things when they're asked to do that. You look at the period after 9/11, where people in New York came together and resolved a crisis situation, and we became stronger and better and got through it. And we really are in a crisis situation right now. We have in New York State 200 municipalities who had deficits last year, ran deficits. 100 of those 100 municipalities in New York State do not have enough cash to get through the year.
Right.
You may have seen this week, the head of the New York School Board Officials Association, Michael Borges, came out and said they had done a survey of all the school business officials in New York State. Maybe it's on 600 plus school boards, school districts, and found that by 2015, over 200 will be technically bankrupt. They will not have enough money to open the doors, and being on the summer school board, what that means. So we really are headed into a crisis situation, and I personally think we're better than places like Chicago. We're better than places like Wisconsin, because we understand how important it is that we maintain a strict discipline, have a plan, go forward, and not wait till everything is falling apart before we start to get our arms around a problem. This is going to mean that everyone is going to have to maybe give up a little bit, but if we all buy in, we can solve this problem, and we do have time to do that. One of the things I would like to see happen, and you asked what I would do if I were elected, is I would push to have or bring legislation to repeal the Triborough Amendment in New York State. This is something that allows public sector employees contracts, once they expire, the step increases, salary increases continue as if the contract is still in force. It doesn't give municipalities and school districts much leverage to...
but that issue seemed to be in the legislation for decades, and
it did.
Nobody can seem to be shake it.
And there wasn't 300 municipalities running out of money. And there wasn't 200 school districts that said, I'm not going to be able to open my door by 2015 if everything keeps on the way it is. So you're right. We did really did coast along for quite a long time. My opponent has been in the assembly for 20 years. She has been very much a part of this process of spending without accountability to the taxpayer. And now the time is up. And we really are going to have to make some difficult decisions in the next year. And I think it's incumbent upon everyone when you go into the voting booth this year to think about, am I selecting the legislator who is strong enough to make the difficult decisions that need to be made? We have to move away from this sort of, I guess, 8th grade election mentality about, I like this person, I like them in the commercial, they're likable. You know, those things are well and good. Of course you want to like your candidate, your leader, but they also have to be strong and they have to have a backbone and they need to be able to take firm positions during difficult times.
Well, this is a difficult one because in education we like to be sort of apolitical. You know, everybody, whether you are Democrats, you are Republicans, we are for the kids, we for education, shouldn't be politically sort of divided. But you judging the performance of the assembly for the past 20-some years, it seemed to be fairly divided by, you know, partisan lines, right? The Democratic-controlled assembly always vote in certain ways, and for the past 25 years, how many laws that sort of get passed are proposed by, say, Republicans versus Democrats? It's probably 99-1 or 100-1.
Well, only, I think,
Zero.
four sponsored bills in committee by Republicans out of maybe 40,000 pieces of legislation, 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah.
Someone told me recently it's 5, got through. So that's really another discussion about why do you have, you know, 2 parties there when you really have one that's making all the decisions and calling the shots. But really just to get back to my initial statement about why doesn't every child in this state have the same opportunities as my children do in Briarcliff schools? How do you make that happen for a child in Peekskill or a child in Ossining or a child in Kingston or a child in Rochester? Why are these children not getting the same opportunities as my children?
Okay, define your opportunities. They certainly have opportunities to enter a school.
When times get tough, things are getting cut back. Music, art, a lot of the extracurricular activities. There may be more children in the classroom than you know, usual. Maybe the quality and the caliber of the
You think that's
itself.
because certain locality they willing to supplement whatever school budget by their own?
How do you mean that?
Well, volunteer programs, for example, music programs can be, or sports programs can be contributed by local, you know, the parents.
I don't think that's the problem at all. I think we have a real fiscal cliff issue in that we have promised, this is just not in schools, this is in government in general.
Public in general.
A benefit package that is so rich that we are unable to support it or sustain it. And when you hear school board officials across the state saying, by 2015, I will not have enough cash to make payroll, that's a crisis. That means you need to be doing something now. It doesn't mean that if people start paying $9 or $14 for their kids to play soccer, that's going to solve this problem. This is a fundamental problem that's wrong, that's not working, that we need to look at and resolve.
This problem, why is only, say, you apply to certain city, not Briarcliff? Briarcliff, Peekskill should be the same.
Well, we have the same problem too, and we're having to make decisions. Every school district has to make trade-offs and decisions. A large part of it is driven by the fact that health insurance is increasing, and you have most government employees not paying anything at all, or very little at all. Well, the pension is one part of it, but also the other post-employment benefits. So those 2 things, and maybe 7 other unfunded mandates, make up about 90% of your property tax bill.
Well, that is a good point, and I sometimes hear a lot of people actually talk about this. In fact, they directly put this challenge to you know, politicians that run for these public offices is that the Congress, from the federal level down, congressmen, senator, or state level, legislators, they enjoy that pension benefits more so, in fact, sometimes, than the public employees. Therefore, it's very difficult for the legislative bodies to fix the problem because it's like taking money out of their own pocket.
That's right.
And this really requires a honest, sort of person, you can say, want to serve the country, serve the state, to come out and say, well, we need to fix that ourselves first.
That's really a much easier fix, believe it or not, because I'll take my opponent, for example. She was a teacher in Virginia. She moved to New York. She was a teacher in Scarsdale. She was a Westchester County legislator for 5 years, and then she has been in the Assembly for 20. So she's here, at least in New York anyway, been on a public payroll for 33 years. Okay, I'm entering this picture at 51. I could go to work in the Assembly in January. This isn't something that can happen this quickly, but this is something I think that needs to happen, and I would certainly bring this legislation. But bringing term limits to our Assembly and to our state legislature, people would not be there a very long period of time. They would either be there, 4 years or 6 years. And so you would eliminate a lot of the people that are there for the benefits or because they can't.
But I think the benefits are not just for longevity. Actually, the benefits sometimes is too generous for freshmen. I mean, in other words, sometimes people serve one term would get a certain benefit.
I mean,
you would never happen in the private sector.
No, you wouldn't. And I happen to agree with you. I think that for a person that is there for 3 days a week, 6 months a year, basically working 66
for one
days
term,
a year.
Let's say.
Look, I'll be the first one to tell you, as a campaigner, you work 18 hours a day, every day of the year. I know that. I'm not minimizing, truthfully, what happens in the job, but for a person who actually has to be there in Albany on the ground, they're there 66 days of the year. They're paid $79,500 a year, plus benefits and committee stipends and expenses. So it's a pretty generous compensation, and it shouldn't be changed.
And that even applies to retirement.
Of course, or as a springboard for wherever they go next. So I see this. I don't want to minimize this issue, but on the grand scale of the crisis that New York faces, this is a big deal. And another place where I would make a change or bring change is to stop the compulsory binding interest arbitration for our municipalities. It's putting. Now, some will say, well, look, you don't have a city other than the city of Peekskill in your Assembly district. Why do you care? Because one thing we really do need to be concerned about here is that you do have some municipalities in New York State that are on the verge of becoming insolvent. Yonkers, for example, Syracuse is probably very close to it. So, I need to be concerned about that as a taxpayer in New York. We all should be, because a couple of things. One, that people that are there, they should have elected officials that are responsible, so that other communities are not having to bear the load of their irresponsibility. But secondly, it's very dangerous, the fact that we could have several municipalities fold at the same time.
Yes.
And that's something we've never experienced before in New York.
Yeah. But this kind of the sort of phenomena is a problem from a lower level, sort of even percolates out to a higher level, from small villages to towns to states. Our whole country now having this kind of problem, that the bankruptcy sort of has to be bailed out by someone else, and this process just cannot go on forever.
Well, it's like becoming a parent. You know, whatever happens, you're in for the long haul.
Right.
And we are in for the long haul. I think there's some folks who feel that we'll just wake up one day and
declare bankruptcy for the country.
No, that this will just go away.
Like Greek.
Greece is more of the reality.
Yeah.
And so, sure, if there might be some things that keep the surface water a little calmer, but the undercurrent is definitely there. And what I feel is putting elected officials in place that are realistic, that walk into this, and you use the word bankruptcy, I think of it very much in terms of how you structure a bankruptcy. It's a good thing. Just like people go for credit counseling,
yeah,
the whole state is going for credit counseling.
Yeah.
And we're going to put a plan together, and it's going to work. And it'll be difficult and painful, and some people may not like it, but we'll get there, and we'll get there in a good place. We don't want to be a Stockton, California. We don't want to be like some of these cities in Rhode Island. We don't want to compromise anyone's benefits, nor should we. I mean, if we approach this problem as a math problem, as something that can be worked through, that we have the benefit of time on our side, that we can structure this in such a way to make it work, it's possible, but we can't do it if we are always looking for the politician who's, telling us that it's a rose garden and there's nothing to worry about.
Well, I agree with you that we have to put our mind to it and try to find solution. But the approach to the problem or solution that people considering seem to be not willing to take the sacrifice. You cannot solve a problem this magnitude without having sacrifice. Someone somewhere has to sacrifice. And if you don't do that, and then the focus seems to be now trying to tax our way out by keep on, just adding tax.
Right.
My opponent, that avoids sort of the sacrifices, that serious sacrifices you have to make. So this is the problem. I think our two-party system seem to be, blaming each other in this fashion. Boils down to is we're not willing to take the serious sacrifice and really deal with the problem.
Well, we're not, and we need to look. It's change, and it may be small things, small differences. But someone said to me once, a budget is 1,000 decisions every day. It really is 1,000 small decisions every day. It's all of us doing one small thing that collectively adds up to the good. And I look at some of the things for hospitals, for example. Some of the more innovative solutions that hospitals are considering to resolve issues. Maybe reclassifying employees, for example, to be more universal in the nature of their work and in the delivery of their work, instead of having very segmented jobs. And that's the sort of the old way that we did things, almost like an assembly line. And there are some models now that are good and they're working and they actually save money. And we should be open to the possibility that this might be a solution to a problem and it actually helps reduce the cost. And sometimes, we fear how something might be, and then when we're actually there, we say, this is not that bad. And that's how I feel. I think maybe some of these things may not be as bad as we fear.
Put that thought into sort of implementation. You sort of meet the resistance that in a very democratic society we're in, whatever that democratic force is, whether you call it unions, you call it voters, whatever, they tend to put this sort of sacrifices to somebody else. And I'm afraid this presidential election this year is being pumped in a way is that burden should be bared by the 1%. Okay.
No, I will
that's
disagree with you. Okay, and I know you're a very smart man, but there's only one group of people who will pay for all of our decisions and inability to make decisions. And I brought two of them with me today.
Yeah.
And that's the next generation. Our children
But they are
will
powerless.
pay. Only if we can't take responsibility now.
Yeah,
If we
but
can't
you
accept
hear
it.
the presidential election, the campaign, and they are trying to divide the society as 1%, 99%, and sort of butting against each other. That's ridiculous.
I never believe that anyone's pain is any better or worse. I really, truly believe that Americans want to do the right thing and make this country great and great again.
So tell me that how you're going to be able to get, say, the public employee union or teachers union or whatever that represents a fairly large, body of members,
right,
to take a sacrifice.
It's really, truthfully, in rational people sit down and look at these things as cost benefit, because we first have to agree that we can't keep going the way that we are. If we have our map and we say we keep going the same way that we are, this is what's going to happen to a third of our school districts. This is what's going to happen to a majority of our municipalities. That's not a good thing. No one wants streets with 4 feet of snow on them and they can't get to work. No one wants a mass transit system that can't function anymore. Commerce can't happen unless everyone has reliable services in a society. So that we first agree upon, that we can't keep going as we are. And then the second step of that is just taking a lot of these things in cost benefit and say, look, if it means changing your job, but you still have a job, is that better than not having a job? If it means changing your job and you're still able to have the pension and the health care that you had before, is that worth changing your job? If from the person who's receiving the service, who is not going to know the difference, whether it's from a person who has this job title or that job title, but they're still receiving the service.
I think you have a very rational, argument here.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, but what I observe, for example, take our Westchester County itself example. We have a very able county executive. He's facing this problem that we are talking about, and I don't think the way we were just discussing. So if we understand, mutually agree, this is the problem, and so on. Apparently, the legislative body and the county executive do not necessarily see eye to eye to that kind of agreement.
I really I don't want to comment too much about the internal politics there and the dynamics of that group, but what I will say, though, is I think we need to give labor a lot more credit than we are. I think there's some very smart, talented, innovative people representing organized labor in public sector unions, and they're there, and I've met them, and I think one of the things that excites me very much is plans for the Tappan Zee Bridge, for example. And I think we all know what a great burst of economic activity will come into this lower Hudson Valley once we're able to start working on the Tappan Zee Bridge. And one of the things that we're looking at or considering or may come up in our legislature very shortly is the opportunity for the public-private partnership.
Now that agree. I mean, when you have a project, the funding that is coming from, say, federal or somewhere else, and that's not difficult to get parties to agree on. Okay.
Well, it is very hard to get them to agree on.
The problem seems to be is if the funding has to come from our own pockets. That's where I think the collaboration sort of breaks down.
Well, at some level of the bridge will be paid from our pockets because we live here and it's our bridge and we use it. So we know that already, and hopefully a good portion of it will come from the federal government, something north of $2 billion, we'll see. But for a $5 billion bridge, but we might even have possibly the option to have private investors invest in the partnership of this bridge. The government, the state would own the bridge, but there would be partners, a party to maintaining and building the bridge, and that's a very exciting thing. And labor would be a part of that, possibly. They might even want to invest in the bridge itself, and the revenues derived, from the bridge, for their pension funds. And that's a very exciting thing. And 30 other states are doing this, and New York is not.
I agree.
So you have to say,
I
why
agree
aren't we
that
there?
when people actually, really under sort of a pinched condition, they ought to use their smarts to solve problems and deal with it. I think whether New York is first or not, that's debatable. We may not be the first state to do this, but some states already probably